Hi, it's the Woolista, and we are going to crochet. I'm going to try and keep the videos shorter, so I'm going to try not to talk too fast to get through this. This is a basic book that I learned how to crochet from, besides going to classes, like Joanne's has classes, and there was a great woman there who taught me how to crochet. And then you pick up things along the way and you get better at it and teach yourself some things. It's a basic book. It teaches you the anatomy of a crochet hook. And I can tell you without a doubt, the throat of the crochet hook, which would be this right here. Nobody in my circles have ever called that the throat of the crochet hook. So use some things and not use some things. These are the different sizes and the millimeters and the letter that references it. These are the smaller crochet hooks, and these would be, you'd typically crochet those thread little things. Thread is pretty much all I can think of that, and very, very like sport yarn, fingering yarn, that type of thing. Moving on. Okay. Here it goes over your different type of threads. Whether it's bulky, worsted, sport, baby weight. It'll say on the yarn that you buy what type it is also. So just basic stuff is in this book. Some tools that you might want to have in your crochet bag. We're not going to go over all that stuff. I've crocheted for decades and you don't use all that stuff. So we're going to go over these basics right here. And we're going to start with a single crochet tonight. And this book also goes the right-hander's version and the left-hander's version. And it's very nice because it has illustrations the whole entire way. So I'm going to move this out of the way for a moment. Grab my yarn, and I'm just using some Red Heart that I had laying around the house. I have a lot of yarn laying around my house. And we're going to start with the slip knot. Put the yarn over your fingers. Pull it around back. Up in front of your fingers. Take your working yarn. Put it over top of the yarn behind your fingers. And pull it through. Now, make it a little tighter. Now you have this big loop on your hook. Or big loop. Put your hook in there and then make the knot a little tighter. Doesn't have to be a death grip, just bring it tighter. The small end of your yarn is your tail, which you eventually will weave into your project, and then the rest is your working yarn. How I hold my yarn is I put my pinky under the yarn, then I pull the yarn up in front of these two fingers and over this finger. I believe I hold my yarn this way for knit and crochet for almost every project. I always pretend like this finger is pretty much broken. That way I can hold the tension on my working yarn. It's going to be kind of wonky at first, but I like to pinch my project between my fingers and my thumb, and we go under. This is, well, you go under, but it's also called a crochet over. You can also take your hand and go like this. Whatever way is easiest for you. I'm just showing you how I do it. So yarn over is what that's called, and I usually turn my hook. And you'll see when you turn the hook, it captures that yarn in the hook. And pull it down. This hand didn't move. Yarn over, pull it through. We're going to do about 20 of these. Yarn over, pull it through. I'll show you the other way too. Yarn over, pull it through. Yarn over, pull it through. Even though I let go of my work, this is your work right here, I still keep my fingers straight to keep that tension on this yarn. Do it again. Keep my fingers straight, and then I grab my project again, pull it through. Whoops, almost lost my hook. Yarn over, grab my project, pull it through. Yarn over, turn my hook, grab my project, pull it through. I can't say that all three at the same exact time. So we're going to do about 20 of these. Sorry if you hear my neighbor's car alarm going off. I don't know what's going on. Oh, it's off now. I don't know what you guys can hear and what you can't hear. And now we're going to count. I don't know how many we have. Anytime that I go to take my hook out, I usually, pull a little bit out so I know exactly where to put my hook back in. Put it down. And I don't remember if I went over it or not. I'm using a J hook tonight by Boyle, and a J hook. This Boyle doesn't have the millimeters. It's a 6mm hook. Some of them will only have the millimeters printed on them. I've seen a lot of crochet hooks that don't even have the letter or the number written on them, and I'll have to make a note to bring my crochet guide on the next video and show you how to measure them. Anywho, moving on to count our stitches. I'm going to bring this up close. Do you see how each stitch makes a V? It comes down like this, comes down like this, and it has a point. In the middle of that V is where you're going to be putting your hook for the next rows. That's your stitch. This is one stitch right here. This is one leg, this is the second leg of the other stitch. This is your V. You see how these are nicely pretty lined up? If yours are not nicely pretty lined up, just keep practicing. This is the right side of the work. Everything's nicely lined up and pretty. If we go to flip it over, this is the back side of our work. It's not a wrong side of the work, it's just the back side of the work. It's all, if you feel it, it's all a little nubbly. And it's just not as pretty and nice as this side. So, we're going to count them now. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Or we can also use our pencil, and you can count how many times you can go into the stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you'll get the same number. It depends on however way you want to count it. I just count the V's. Oh, totally lost count. Talking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Put my hook back in. Close it up. Yarn over. Pull it through. 16. Yarn over. Pull it through. 17, 18, 19, 20. Now we are going to turn our work. We're going to chain 1, and that is going to be the edge of our work. Then we are going to single crochet in the first hook from the chain. which means we're going to go into this hole right here. This hole is the one on the chain that our yarn is coming through. See that? So we're going to go into the next one. This tip goes into the stitch. Now we have 2 on the hook. And we can go by our book here if you want to read it. Let's see if we can read it from here. This is the single crochet. So we chained, well, it says 17, we did 20, that doesn't matter. Insert the hook in the second chain from the hook, and the illustration shows into the second chain from the hook. And you have 2 loops on your hook. Now it says bring yarn over and draw through both loops on the hook. The next illustration shows you bringing the yarn over the hook, and then you're going to draw through those 2 loops, and then it's going to look like this. So we are going to yarn over, like the book said, and draw through both hoops. And now it looks just like the picture. And we are here. And it also says as you crochet, you will always have 1 loop remaining. So we are going to single crochet all the way to the end. Take your hook and go into the stitch. Show that a little more up close. Take your hook. We're going to go into the V. So here's one side of the V. Here's the other side of the V. Into the hook, or into the stitch, sorry. Yarn over and draw through both loops. 2. Our yarn is going through let me get that situated there. Our yarn is going through here, so our next stitch will be right here. This is one side of the V, this is the other side of the V. That's just one to fall there. You can see that my thumb is right in front of the V and there. Okay, moving on. Go into the V, yarn over, and pull through both. Go into the stitch, the next stitch, it's just a little wonky when you first start crocheting. Yarn over and pull through both loops. Go into the next stitch. And use your other fingers if you have to push it through that stitch. Once you start getting your project going, it'll be easier to hold. Yarn over, pull through both loops. Go into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull through both loops. We're going to do that to the end, and then we're going to move on to a different stitch. Well, maybe we should do one more row. No, we can move on to the next. This single crochet is very easy. Into the stitch, pull through both loops. 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 into the stitch, pull through both loops, into the stitch, yeah. This is the last one. There's our tail, and here's our one last remaining stitch. Go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through. So single crochet makes everything very, very tight. Well, except for where I was messing up earlier. My low tension was off because I was trying to hold it and show you the stitch at the same time. To turn, we are going to yarn over, pull through the loop, and turn our work. What's the next stitch on here? Oh, a slip stitch. So the next stitch in this book is a slip stitch, which is usually used for ending a row in the pattern. Like say you were gonna make something and you needed to crochet, 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 and then you needed to make a indent in it. Oh, I'm not explaining that very well. But it's used to like stop your pattern where it is. So to slip stitch, you put your hook into the next stitch. Now to grab the whole entire stitch, you will now have 2 on top of your hook. If you want to go into, if you want to go into the front loop only, you would put your hook in, and you would split these 2 and only grab this one. But now every row is going to have, you're going to see how this splits? So every stitch now, your V's are here, and this is your V now that you have one row. Here's one leg, here's the other leg. The next one, here's one leg, here's your other leg. One leg, other leg. So that's 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3 stitch, 4 stitch, 5 stitch. If your pattern says to grab just the front loop, then you're only going to grab the one that would be facing you. So this would be front loop only. You would grab one of these. Back loop only, you're going to grab this one. Just a normal stitch, you're going to have both of these on your hook. Here, I'll show you. Let me get a couple in before I show you so it's easier. Into the stitch. Yarn over, pull through, and we are slip stitching, which is a little harder than I thought with this yarn and this needle. Into the stitch. And the slip stitches you just yarn over. Okay, so if your pattern were to call for front loop only, you're going to take your hook and only put it through the front loop like this. Now let's take it out Now if it wants back loop only, you're going to take your hook, you see how you have your V? You're only going to capture the back hook. The front hook is still right here. A normal neck stitch would be grab both. There's your stitch, your V. One leg, two leg. Here's the middle of your V. Yarn over and pull through. So we're slip stitching to the very end. So you're going to grab both. And pull through. See, you have two legs on that hook. Yarn over. A good habit to get into while crocheting, knitting, whatever, is every so often just pull your work out, straighten it out. Just tug on it a little, pull it out, and just straighten it out a little bit. Okay. It's a slip stitch. The single crochet and the slip stitch are very tight stitches. That's nothing you are doing wrong. They are just your more tighter stitches. If you want something very warm, closely stitched, something that the air is not going to get through, you would use your single crochet. Okay. We were at the end. So now we are going to chain one. What are we doing next? Half double crochet. Okay, now we're going to put some height into our project. So the half double crochet tells you to bring your yarn over and insert your hook into the third chain from the hook. Bring your yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 on your hook, bring it over and draw through all 3. That's what the half double crochet says. So, let's chain 2. Now we're going to yarn over, the book said, and go to the third chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3. This is our hook and our edge. 1, 2, 3. Yarn over, go through our stitch, which means we're going to grab both legs. Leg 1 and leg 2. See how we have our V's all along the top of our work? All the way down here, all these V's. And then you're going to yarn over and pull through that stitch. Now you have 3 chains on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, next we're going to do that all the way to the end of the row. So yarn over, put it into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You now have 3. Yarn over, pull through all 3. Yarn over, insert the hook into your next stitch. Yarn over, pull it through the stitch. You now have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull it through all 3. Yarn over. Oop, that only caught one leg. There's the second leg. And this yarn is notorious for splitting. Yarn over, pull through this stitch, so you have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through all 3. And we're going to do that to the end of the row. Grab both legs, yarn over. If you notice, this finger's not bending. I always keep it tight. This one does move as I keep grabbing my yarn as I go, or my project as I go. And you can crochet with any type of, just about anything. Yarns, any thick, thin yarns. You can crochet with hemp. You can crochet with, I've seen people crochet with, you know that old, those cameras they used to use, 35mm tape. There is a designer, a crocheter, knitter extraordinaire. His name is Stevie B, and he has a shop in Minnesota. And he crocheted, I think he knitted a vest with the 35mm. But he has crocheted with some of the most outlandish stuff I've ever seen. He crochets, knits, all kinds of stuff. I believe there are a couple YouTubes out there with him. It's Stevie B in Minnesota. He's also on Instagram and such. I met him and his mama. He was doing a pajama party at the Pittsburgh Knit and Crochet Festival. I took my mom to, and Mama Christie is what his mom's name is. Sat with my mom, and he's just a very awesome guy. He travels the world looking for different yarns and textures and to knit with and learn about them, and then comes back and teaches other people about them. Not sure if he still travels all around now or not, but hopefully one day I'll get to visit his shop in Minnesota. That would be fun. Okay, on with the show. Yarn over into the next stitch. He has a term that I live by now. When I first started crocheting and knitting, I was like, oh, I gotta do it just by the pattern. And if it didn't come out exactly right, I was like upset, thought I did something wrong. And then at one of his pajama parties, where we would go over all of our work and he would have contests and stuff, it was just a bunch of fun down in the hotel lobby. He said, he was like, remember everybody, he's like, your patterns are only a suggestion. And that just struck a chord with me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so true. You can just change it to anything you want. The patterns are only a suggestion to do it that way. You can change it any way you want as long as you like the outcome. You can change the texture of the yarn, the length, it just doesn't matter. Colors. And then that phrase just has always stuck with me forever. Then I was just relieved. I was like, oh gosh. You could tell I was a newbie then. Because probably some more advanced people, if you're watching my show, are like, oh, come on, girl. So mine's a little wonky because and just give it a little tug here. And we put a little bit of height in our work. And as you double crochet, that will like double your height. And treble crochet goes further. We're going to do another row of half double crochet. Half double crochet is a little easier to work with. It doesn't make your work so tight and condensed. It does put a little bit of air in between your stitches. So if you wanted to have a little bit of air and have it a little more drapey, that's the bigger stitches you go. So we are going to chain 2, 1, 2, and turn our work. And again, here's our row of these, which they're a little bit more prominent now that we are half double crocheting. We chained 2, that's going to be the edge of our work. Sometimes they will count that as your first stitch in your pattern, sometimes they won't. 9 times out of 10 I would say they tell you whether they count it or not. Sometimes in your patterns it'll say row 1. Let's skip back a second. Because they chain 2 and then row 1 will be chain 9. And then row 2 would be chain 2 and then 10. That usually would mean that they are counting the edge as one of your stitches. But we'll go over that whenever I start going over the patterns. So yarn over, and then we're going to go into the first one from our hook. So yarn over, into the stitch, pull up a loop, there's 3 on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. Oops, I might not have been on camera. Yarn over, go into your next stitch, and these are more prominent now. You can see the holes better, especially because I have a bigger hook. Yarn over, pull a loop, yarn over, go through all 3. Yarn over, into your stitch, and we're going to do that to the end of our work. This finger is still remaining straight. It keeps the tension on my yarn here. I'm still carrying my yarn the same way as it flows through my fingers and over my index finger. It's got a little bit of tension on it, which usually helps keep your... Oops, I did that one wrong. Hold on. Had one too many. Yarn over. Crochet itself is pretty easy, pretty basic, just like knit. Learning your patterns and other things to look for, that is where the tricky part comes in. But once you do it once or twice, the things you thought were tricky become second nature. The difference between, excuse me, why a lot of people like to crochet versus knit is if you make a mistake. Here, let's just make a few mistakes. I'm making a mistake right now, so don't do as I do. I pull a little bit of yarn out. On a cloth here because I'm working on a drop table, and you can see the seam of the table, and that was going to drive up my OCD nuts. Okay, so we did a couple of the wrong stitches. Right up to the end here. Excuse me if you heard that. Alright, so you see in your work, you can tell you started doing a different stitch. See, there's only this amount of height. Everything's going, it's even. Boom. You have an extra stitch there. It is way bigger. See how that has like tier 1, tier 2? This has tier 1. Doesn't have 2 tiers. That would be a double crochet to a half double. So in crochet, it's easy. You just pull it out. Pull out your double crochets, and you can just pull out as far back as you want. Insert your hook and carry on again. That's what a lot of people like about crochet. So if you mess up in knit, however, you literally have to back each stitch off the needle, and that takes it's not hard once you learn how to do it. It just, if you're, what was I doing, half double, okay. If you're 10 rows back, it's a little time consuming. That's why it's very important to keep checking your work. Half double, gotta remember what stitch I'm on here. Okay, I don't know what I did at the end here. Oh, that's because I went from one stitch to another stitch. Normally, you won't have that right there. Let's chain 2, turn, and we're doing another row. But since we went from a single to a slip stitch to a half double, that's why it has that weird little loop there. And you just do this, the same thing all the way to the end. And then when you get to the end, if you have a row counter, you would click it, or to count your rows in crochet. We're only going to count the half double rows because that's a different stitch down there. 1, this would be 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows. And you can see how they're kind of divided. You see the stitch here, kind of divided, stitch. This is going to be your right side of your work. It looks nicer. This looks a little more nubbier. You can tell that on camera. This is the back side of your work, not the wrong side, the back side. If you flip it over, it looks nicer. You can see the stitches nicer. So we're going to end this sampler right here. Shake out your hands. And if you're done, this is a relaxing, once you learn how to crochet and get fluid in it, it's going to relax you. I'm going to rip out all of my work. Now I will give you something to practice on until the next video, if you want. Or you can go watch YouTube's. I'm going to chain, I'll do a little quicker. I'm going to chain 20, like I did before. 1, 5, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I'm going to chain 1 to turn, and I'm going to chain 2. Then we are going to half double crochet 1, 2 into the stitch. And then try just going row after row after row of half double crochet and see how far you get until the next video. Now a scarf can be any length that you want it to be. Just keep going back and forth in rows until you have it as long as you want it to be. And then I'm going to show you how to end. Ending is easy. You don't have to like cast off or anything. You literally just come to the end of a row in crochet, yarn over into stitch, half double into the stitch. See, I use my other fingers to help me go into the stitches just while the project is so small yet. I use my fingertips, well, nails right now because I have them on. I normally only have my thumbnails done because I damaged them a long time ago. And then my other fingers are normal fingernails, though I don't have the acrylics on. But right now I treated myself and one of my youngest to a pedicure. And that one's just a long beginning. So chain 2 to turn. I'll do at the end of this row, I'll show you how to, if you wanted to end your work right here. Yarn over. So I think in this series I'm just going to take some different stitches and just show you how to work them and show you how to read a pattern. And I can tell you to this day, if it's a long pattern and it's a big paragraph of lots of stuff to do, I literally hand type it out and hand write it out. If it's a more complicated one, put it that way. But I always make a copy of my patterns and mark them off as I do them with a pencil, whether it's knit, crochet, anything. Because there's nothing worse than losing your place. And we're at the end of the row now. So if I were to stop here, we did our last stitch. Let me do that again. So we're coming to the end of our row. If I were to want to end my work right here, I would take my scissors, I would cut the yarn, and well, I can show you. I can show you how to. I would cut the yarn over, pull it through, and that's going to make it all tight. And that's how we would end it. So, the next video, I'm going to show you how to weave in the ends. And not sure what else. Oh, we'll probably go over a double crochet. And start on a pattern. Well, I'll see you on the next video and we will see what all we go over. I hope you like this. I'm sure they'll get better as I keep on with them. It's easier, definitely easier, I think, to teach somebody in person, somebody right here, and guide their hand and show them than on a video. But I hope you understood what I was doing. Alright, have a good night.